Christian, I've been following Tier 4 for quite a while. I'm very bullish on the Japanese market as it relates to autonomy. Tier 4, based in Japan. How are you approaching autonomy in Japan?
Yeah, great question. Our company is developing reference platforms for autonomy solutions to be integrated into various vehicles and in different operational design domains. We do that based on Autoware open source software. So we start from the open source, we build a reference implementation for the vehicle. So we'll have what we call edge.auto, which is a reference of the ECUs, the various sensors, cameras, LiDAR, radar for that particular vehicle type. We have what we call pilot.auto, which is actually the software that runs on that edge platform that's taking the Autoware open source software, integrating other components. If you're looking at public road type applications where you have to have functional safety, of course, you'll look at things like safety islands, real-time operating systems, middleware that needs to be hardened, safety certifiable. So we build a full stack implementation of an AD system around the open source, leveraging these other components. And then we also have what we call web.auto, which is the cloud platform where we do development, CI/CD, simulation, data collection from a fleet of vehicles, ingesting that then into the development pipeline. We also have fleet management capabilities built into that platform where you can do the over-the-air updates, monitoring, tasking, all those aspects of operating an autonomous fleet of vehicles. And then based on this reference platform, as I said, we target different vehicles, operational design domains. We do taxis, buses, closed area, factory logistics, off-road, construction, these types of applications, each one of these being a different vehicle reference configuration. In many cases, we're providing this reference to a partner that is then integrating it with their vehicle, and we work with them to commercialize and deploy those vehicles. In some cases, Tier 4 is a little bit more involved in the actual development of the vehicle. So, for example, in the buses, it's an example where we actually source the buses from an OEM. We do the integration of the autonomy kit, the validation, and then we provide this sort of end-to-end system of cloud and autonomy-enabled vehicle to operators, which then can offer the services to municipalities in Japan that want to integrate these autonomous vehicles into their fleets.
Why did the company take a reference platform approach to autonomy instead of just doing a pure EDE approach?
The vision that Shinpei Kato, the founder of the company, had was that this was going to be built on open source technology. And it was really what we were trying to do was create a platform which allows many companies to innovate and develop new mobility services that include autonomy. You've seen many companies try to develop autonomy solutions, investing hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, just looking at one particular problem and fail. Our approach is, through an open platform approach, you're going to get many companies involved in the development, the innovation of the technology, the adaptation of the technology to different use cases. And through that sort of collaborative investment in the technology, you're going to be able to deliver these services at cost and scale that you will not be able to achieve in the long run with a vertically proprietary system implementation.
So you're looking at this as a community approach. Various members of the community invest to scale the technology.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at the open source community, you'll find companies like ARM, AMD, silicon IP companies, SoC vendors. You'll find operating system. Red Hat is a member of the foundation. We have middleware software providers. We have other companies which are providing technology components that go into the open source stack. So, There's of course the open source implementation of a perception module, but there's many companies out there now that are developing AI based perception models. We work with many of them. We integrate that within the framework of the open source software. And now you can take those models and apply them very quickly into these different types of autonomy applications. And it's through that kind of joint investment and innovation that, it creates more optimized system implementations. These silicon vendors, they are developing the next generation of IP for chipsets or the chipsets with AI acceleration capability. This open stack approach allows them to already integrate the full autonomy stack, start to look at how to optimize their architectures. We, of course, then can leverage that because they're doing a lot of work on bring up of the stack on their silicon. We integrate that into our edge.auto references along with the components from the OS middleware providers, which are also investing in working with the open source software. So through that whole ecosystem approach, you really can sort of match the investment, let's say, of some of these large vertically integrated autonomy companies, and everyone can participate in this innovation and commercialization of the technology.
Because to me, if you look at what you're building at tier four, the first thing that goes through my head is what's happening at Meta with Llama, where it's open source. There's a lot of talk in the LLM community, or ChatGPT is going to have to open source some of their models. Is that a fair comparison amongst the open source?
We're starting to see that transition in autonomy. I mean, you see more and more of sort of this AI end-to-end type approach coming into the different types of services. So, companies like the Plus announcement that we had in trucking, or Wave in vehicles, where end-to-end is coming in. Autoware continues to evolve as an architecture, which also is looking at integrating AI models end to end, whether it's, two-stage type models where you have a perception model and then a path planning model, or a pure, sensors in, controls out type model. All of these can be integrated within the architecture of Autoware and then applied to these different problems. And one of the things that we're working on is making references available for these types of models so that you can leverage the Autoware architecture. There'll be reference models with the necessary tool chains to train those models and apply them. And then the companies that are using Autoware can start from there, and then they can train and adapt the models for their particular vehicle and operating environment. And that's something that I see starting now, and over the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to start to see implementations based on that kind of approach show up in the market.
The tier four platform was built on Autoware, which you now, congratulations, sit on the board of, and the founder of tier four was the founder of Autoware. How did tier four evolve out of Autoware, and why is that the platform that you choose to build and commercialize your business?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, Autoware was originally created by the founder of our company, Shinpei Kato, when he was at Nagoya University, as a project to develop an autonomy stack on top of ROS, Robot Operating System, which is another open source project, released in 2015 into open source. And then Tier 4 was founded as a company to essentially work with institutions, companies that were interested in using the open source and applying it to different problems that, where autonomy could be applied to address the requirements of optimizing delivery of services. And we've evolved now as that company that, is providing those services around the open source to provide these reference solutions that I mentioned before, where we have the cloud platform, the AI based software, the hardware platforms, which companies can then use. And we provide the services for them to work with that platform and adapt for their particular vehicle and operating environment.
Are there any limitations to what can be built on tier four? So you would have the trucks, you have the plus relationship, you have robotaxis, you have forklifts, which there's a massive growing shortage of forklift drivers in Japan. You have all sorts of modalities. Are there any limitations of what can and cannot be built on the tier four platform?
I would say there's no limitations as far as the imagination of working within this architecture. So there's limitations as far as the capabilities that are currently in Autoware. I mean, it's an open platform, so it's more about an architecture and a framework for integrating the various technologies that we've talked about, perception or end-to-end AI. So as far as the implementation as it stands right now, it's just based on where we've applied it to different problems and gone through the process of commercializing the technology. And our company was very focused on things like bus and robotaxi, and not so much on the trucking segment and the high speed highway operation of these large vehicles. And that's where it was very easy for us to look at who do we consider as partners that we could work with integrating their technology, the end-to-end AI that's already been tested on trucks in the US market. And now let's integrate it into our platform. Let's do the training and adaptation of that for the Japanese market using a lot of the data that we've collected in the Japanese market. And this helps us to scale into a new segment that we have not yet developed a system. And likewise, a partner like Plus, who's been very focused on the US market, now can work with Tier 4 to enter a new market like Japan.
Staying on the Plus theme, so Plus has an AI virtual driver. They're going to integrate that into the tier four platform, and you're going to put the parameters and I'll call the habits, because driving in Japan culturally is a lot different than driving in America. First of all, Japanese have manners, unlike Americans that jaywalk and do all sorts of things. Is that does that accelerate Plus's expansion into Japan because you have this, say, Japanese data set that they can build upon?
Exactly. So you're starting to see a lot more interest from companies now to enter the Japanese market. I mean, we've seen announcements recently from Waymo, Wave, Neuro. May Mobility is another one that's active in the market. There's a very significant opportunity in the Japanese market around mobility services, and many companies come to us and ask for help to scale into Japan because we've been working there for 10 years, collecting data, understand the requirements of operating autonomous vehicles in the market. And again, that benefits us to have an open platform approach where we can then work with those partners to help them scale. In some cases, yeah, it may be a competitive offering to what we've been developing, but in some cases, like I said, I mean, in the end, we find ways to partner with these companies that is kind of a win-win for both companies to scale autonomy. Because in the end, it's a huge market. We've seen the companies that try to go it alone, vertically integrated, really struggle and fail. And the way we look at it, there's still a lot of innovation that has to happen for scalability in these different service areas. We're still looking at system implementations right now, which are still fairly expensive. If you look at the compute platform, the sensors, the cost of these implementations is still quite high. There's still a lot of innovation that has to happen in bringing in AI-based technologies, optimizing the compute architecture, the sensor suite, and so forth. And this is where we can work together to really enable autonomy to scale more broadly.
Japan has one of the finest. This goes back to post-war Japan with Ike Murata, the founder of Sony, is some of the finest scientists in the world as it relates to electronics. I'm a very big fan of Sony's products. Their depth sensing technology that's used in their cameras, which are phenomenal, but they're also putting that depth sensing technology in cars. Are you tapping into that vast talent pool and those scientific breakthroughs that are occurring on a regular basis in Japan?
Sony, for example, that is one of the leading provider of these types of sensors, the CMOS sensors that go into automotive grade cameras. Investor in Tier 4, we work with them. We actually build automotive grade cameras, which are integrated with ROS and Autoware based on the Sony sensors and make those available as part of our reference hardware platforms. And those cameras are actually a pretty popular product because if you look at the market, it's very difficult for companies to acquire automotive grade sensors. Typically that's a tier one type solution that goes exclusively to OEMs and not something that is broadly available in the market. So we actually provide these reference hardware configurations with these next generation advanced cameras, leveraging, as you said, some of the best sensors in the market developed by the Japanese scientists.
Could we consider or look at Tier 4 as being a Japanese accelerator for a company that wants to expand into the Japanese market?
The companies that are typically approaching us are the ones that are looking at the segments right now around mobility services like the trucking, public road, taxi type applications. These are areas where, if you want to accelerate your integration into the Japanese market, this is where Tier 4 can really add a lot of value.
When you add value, how do you add value to the business? Well, what's the business model of Tier 4?
Well, again, it goes back to the open platform concept of, we have, data collection platforms that we are making available to customers. So then, they can leverage data that we've collected using all the vehicles that we've deployed throughout Japan. We have the reference implementations for different vehicles where we can integrate their technology within that open reference platform and apply it to a different autonomy application.
You apply it to different applications. One of the applications that stood out to me that I thought was absolutely fascinating, which needs to happen here in America, is that you have a partnership with Nippon Steel to move steel beams, and hopefully Nippon Steel will be able to successfully, I think they should acquire U.S. Steel. So I'll say that for the record. Hopefully that happens because they're an extremely well-managed steel company. How is Nippon Steel using autonomy in Japan? What are they unlocking? Is it because of the labor shortages? What efficiencies are they gaining?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is this, particularly in factory environments, this kind of shift towards sort of a logistics model where you're removing the humans from tasks which are not adding a lot of value, right? Moving material from point A to point B within a factory. And that's exactly what Nippon Steel is using Autoware based solutions for, is these large flatbeds which move the I-beams throughout the factory environment. And it's actually a great example of the platform concept because the implementation with Nippon Steel was actually based on a reference implementation that we developed for factory environments working with Yamaha. So we have a joint venture in Japan with Yamaha called Autonomy, which basically is developing logistics solutions for factory environments based on an adaptation of a Yamaha golf cart platform. So it's a small vehicle, it has some trailers behind it. It operates autonomously inside of factory buildings, between factory buildings, moving material around. So it's this idea of, these sort of milk run type moving material around. This is not a high value add for the humans to be focused on those types of tasks. They should be more on those at the end point where the material is utilized. This is where human labor adds a lot of value. And there's a shift towards automating more of this moving material around. We developed this reference with Yamaha, which is now deployed in tens of factories throughout Japan, these vehicles moving material around. That same reference implementation that from a small golf cart like form factor was then adapted very quickly by a team of less than 5 engineers to work on this large flatbed, hauling steel I-beams around. So, it's difficult to build a business case for somebody like Nippon Steel with the number of those vehicles to say, hey, we're going to go develop our own autonomy solution. They were able to very quickly take our platform approach, integrate it into their vehicle, and start using it within their factory environments and leveraging this sort of open platform approach.
Did your team at Tier 4 work with the Nippon team I'll use the term, to co-develop that, or did Nippon have their own development team completely in-house using your reference docs?
We developed it. So they do not have an in-house team that is developing autonomy solutions. They came to us, and then our team worked on integrating the sensors, the electronics, integrating with the drive-by-wire for this large flatbed, integrating the software, and then adapting the software to operate within their factory environment. So it's a turnkey solution from our side for their application.
Today, together, you're at one factory. Steel doesn't just reside at one factory, it resides at multiple factories in multiple countries and continents. Could we potentially see that partnership?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's huge potential for this to scale into other factories, other countries, once we do these reference implementations. And like I said, this is all based on, it started from this initial reference architecture that was first developed with Yamaha and these golf carts, but now that same reference implementation is going into the steel carriers, it's going into construction site, heavy equipment, agriculture type solutions. And yeah, we're just scaling it out through these partnerships and customer engagements.
Could we eventually see those reference stocks be used for forklifts, which I mentioned earlier? The Japanese government's published data on the growing forklift driver shortage in the country.
Forklifts are something that we're not actually using Autoware yet. It's more the AMRs, which are integrating with the forklifts, are using Autoware to move material to where those forklifts are operating. So I can't speak specifically about the forklift market.
What we can say is that there are possibilities to put your software on multiple platforms, and you've already put it on multiple platforms. You've put it on Class 8 trucks. You've put it on buses, small buses, large buses. What type of vehicles are currently deployed in Japan running the Tier 4 software?
Yeah, so right now, predominantly buses in commercial operation. The motivation behind that, again, aging population in Japan, particularly in rural suburban markets requiring transportation solutions. Part of that aging population, of course, is the bus drivers, which are retiring, and there are no new bus drivers coming into the pool. So the government, under this Mobility DX initiative, is investing in enabling autonomous busing. And those services now are starting to ramp up. The goal is by the end of 2025, there's going to be 50 markets with services operating, 100 markets by the end of 2027. And Tier 4 has been pretty successful as far as securing the projects for those different municipalities. I think we're at roughly about 50% of the awards have been granted to Tier 4 already.
That's really impressive. The technology is clearly working, is clearly scaling, but the other side of this is public trust. And some older individuals are very nervous about getting into an autonomous vehicle, let alone an autonomous bus. How is Tier 4 working with the local communities to build this public trust?
Great question. So, of course, part of the integration of this technology into these communities requires a lot of education and training. So we have to work closely with the municipalities, the first responders, about how to work with autonomous vehicles within their transportation network. But one of the things that we do also is bring in students, the young kids, and do events where they get to experience the technology, and they get very excited about seeing this technology, and they talk about it with their parents, their grandparents, and that helps to create sort of the awareness and trust in the technology. And the other thing that we take very seriously, of course, is the safety. So, we really do focus on the safety of the implementation, the verification of the system before it goes into operation to really ensure that, that there aren't going to be any significant incidents. And that's where, in the US market, maybe we tend to move a little bit faster and freer and take more risks on the deployment. But, in Japan, it's pretty, I would say, conservative from that perspective, as far as really, deploying only once we're really comfortable that the service is going to work safely.
But that's the country's culture, and you have to we have to respect that culture, because that's a lot of things when I speak with individuals. If you're going to deploy in a different country, you have to understand the culture and the customs, because they're different, and you have to respect them. The curiosity hat's on here. When you're building the public trust, have you ever run experiments where you put a robot in the driver's seat to try and use that as a way to build public trust?
That's not something that we've explored in the early phases of these deployments to build trust. I mean, you like here, you go through these phases of having safety drivers still in the vehicles. So they know that it's an autonomous vehicle, but there's still somebody that's kind of overseeing the operation of the vehicle. And then after a period of time, you start to see those safety drivers getting pulled out once they're really comfortable with the performance of the system.
It's a gradual approach to excellence. Describe it.
Yeah, exactly.
Outside of buses, you have a robotaxi deployment in Tokyo. Is that open to the public now?
During limited times, we do trials where the public is invited to do test rides. Most of the time, it's still running kind of our engineers and kind of as a closed operation. But that being said, we are getting to the point now where I think over the next 1 to 2 years, we're going to see more of that sort of broader availability of service, where the public can use these types of robotaxis within the Tokyo market. Right now, we've been testing predominantly in the Odaiba area within Tokyo, which is kind of along the bay there. We've done some testing in Shinjuku as well, which is actually a pretty densely populated area of Tokyo. And we're starting to look at new platforms as well. So the initial trials that we did, we worked with Japan Taxi. We actually did a retrofit of their existing taxi platforms. And now Tier 4 is working on some next generation hardware and vehicle platforms for the robotaxi use case. And that's where we're working with strategic partners like Suzuki in Japan, that provides these small shuttle type vehicle platforms that we can use for these types of transportation solutions.
Over the years, as you ramp up, you perfect the technology, perfect the hardware specs. Will Tier 4 operate the commercial robotaxi service, or will you look for a partner to operate that for you?
No, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we typically our longer term vision is that what Tier 4 is going to provide is the open platform and the solutions that our partners and customers will use to integrate into these different types of services. So the bus case was one that is, I think, a little bit unique, where we were looking to accelerate the availability of the buses, particularly electric buses with autonomy. There wasn't yet a solution in Japan, so Tier 4 worked with various companies to kind of develop this platform and then provide a more complete sort of turnkey vehicle ready to be deployed. But the longer term scalability that we're looking at for the company is more through leveraging the cloud and the reference edge platforms, and then allowing partners to take that and integrate it and adapt it to their particular vehicle and operational design domain.
In summary, you'll have an operator who will be a partner that will offer a robotaxi service. Will that be branded Tier 4? Will that be branded powered by Tier 4? Or how's that going to work from a branding perspective?
Yeah, it's, For example, in the case of the buses right now, one of the companies we work with in Japan is Boldly. So it's actually Boldly then that acquires the system from Tier 4, and then they provide that to the municipality as a service that they operate. So it's built on Tier 4 technology and solutions, but they are the service operator to the municipality. And I think longer term, that's the kind of scaling model that we look to build upon, is to find those types of partnerships where the companies will take our technology. There's an OEM involved. In some cases, we would like to license our platform to the OEM. They will build the reference on their platform and then provide that to the operating company. In some cases, like we did in Japan, we may go a little bit further, but it depends. We're somewhat flexible, let's say, on how we implement this open platform model.
And on the backside of deploying with partners, you need fleet management. Somebody has to clean the vehicles, service vehicles, charge the vehicles. Is there a company or companies that have emerged in Japan to really handle the fleet management element of autonomy?
Yeah, that's where the operators like Boldly, they work with the municipalities. I mean, they already have the infrastructure for things like cleaning the vehicles, and they need to integrate their operation of the autonomous fleet within the municipality infrastructure. And that's part of the process of deploying these types of services.
And that could use your web.auto reference, could tie in there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fleet management that they're using in these deployments is built on our cloud platform. So they use our fleet management system, data recorders, all of the sort of update capabilities that we provide as part of that cloud platform. That's part of the turnkey solution that we offer to those customers.
You offer a complete package, and there's a very clear path for scaling autonomy in the Japanese market. Shifting gears to North America, are there plans for Tier 4 to expand to operations in North America and really scale?
Yeah, we're actively looking at opportunities right now in the U.S. market. Particularly at bringing the technologies that we've already implemented and started to deploy in Japan. So this year we achieved the first ever level 4 certification in Japan of autonomous vehicles with these buses. So the maturity of that platform now is at a point where we're starting to look at how do we bring it into other markets. So Tier 4 is actively looking at projects now in Australia, UK, US market, where we're going to leverage that platform. And again, the approach would be to look for partnerships where we can bring that technology either through an engagement with an OEM here that is providing a Build America compliant bus with all of the federal motor vehicle safety standards and requirements for operation here, or the operators that are looking for those types of autonomous solutions. And we're starting to see that show up here as well, more focus around, the need to address driver shortages, provide transportation solutions in rural, suburban environments. So I think the same issues that we're seeing in Japan are starting to show up in other markets as well. Japan may be a little bit ahead from the perspective of the government kind of coming up with a sort of cohesive strategy about how they want to address this nationwide. But that being said, I'm seeing some of those same discussions happen here when you talk to individuals in different transit authorities or U.S. Department of Transportation. It's coming here as well.
It's coming. It's bubbling up. There's a growing labor shortage. There's a growing driver shortage. The big difference, or actually one of the main big differences, going from Japan to the United States, the individuals in Japan drive on the left-hand side of the road. Individuals in the United States drive on the right-hand side of the road. How do you adapt your software for the driving on the opposite side of the road?
That's something that is already kind of built into the framework of Autoware, is the ability to operate in either left or right hand drive markets. A good example of that, we're not the only company right now that is commercializing Autoware based autonomy solutions. So there's other members of our foundation. A good example is a company, Adastec. They also develop a autonomous bus platform leveraging Autoware as the base for their implementation. Similar model around start from open source, then build a full stack, functionally safe autonomous bus platform. They're already operating that Autoware based vehicle in North America. They have deployments in Europe, also in other parts of Asia. And again, it's another partner that we look at in the sense of deploying the technology, testing it, working on the verification of Autoware operating on the left hand side versus right hand side, and helping to ensure that the core functionality that we provide in the open source can address either deployment case.
It's fascinating what the team at Tier 4 is building. We wish you success. We can't wait to see you scale, not just in Japan, but globally. Christian, what is the future of Tier 4?
So for us now, we're continuing to evolve the reference solutions that we're developing to include more optimized implementations, starting to address even the passenger vehicle market. So building on the fact that we have an autonomy platform that we're deploying on public roads in Japan, and partners are using that same autonomy platform in other markets. I mean, this has been one of the major challenges for companies to enter the passenger vehicle market, right? You need to have an autonomy platform that can scale into any market across Asia, North America, Europe, which is a huge undertaking. This open source platform approach, I think, is one that's going to help us to penetrate that market. So there's a lot of focus right now on system optimization to address those markets, bringing in end-to-end AI. So the Autoware project is constantly evolving. So, we're also evolving the open source architecture through this transition of Autonomy 1.0, kind of the modular rules-based architectures, to AV 2.0, which is now bringing in more of the end-to-end. And then, everybody's already starting to talk about AV 3.0, which is now bringing in generative AI world models and training these systems to really achieve that next level of scalability and safety that's required to scale broadly. So Tier 4 is really, I think, well positioned to kind of participate in this evolution of autonomy through our open platform approach and with all the partnerships that we're forming through the open source ecosystem.
Tier 4 is developing the future of open source autonomy. The future is bright, the future is autonomous, the future is Tier 4. Christian, thank you so much for coming on the road to autonomy today.
Yeah, Grayson, it was a pleasure being here, and look forward to talking to you again soon.